Recently, an army of ghostwriters have churned out dozens and dozens of books on behalf of rock and roll meatheads, and they are all bad. Welcome to episode 10 of the Doomed Planet podcast. Rock autobiographies are torture. Part 1. Bruce Dickinson of Iron Maiden tells all.
I'm a person. They're gonna kill us all. I wish I was shorter because they like people that are tall.
What Does This Button Do? An autobiography came out in 2017. Bruce Dickinson. Asterisk may contain flying heavy metal. The first warning sign that this book is going to suck would be the amateurish looking cover, poorly designed. It's Bruce lying on his stomach, pointing up at a black circle that says, "What does this button do?" This is going to be torture, folks.
Yo, I'm a tortilla.
I'm a tortilla, baby!
So for those of you under the age of 70, Iron Maiden is a very successful British rock band. And I really only could recognize one of their songs, and that would be Run to the Hills. And only because that I am a Gen Xer, and that was played constantly on MTV. The important thing is that, like most of these metal bands, Iron Maiden has the street cred among the actual people that go to the concerts and listen to this music, and they worship these rock gods as gods. It's funny to me, Iron Maiden is the definition of boredom, almost like Pearl Jam. Like, I literally could not name or recognize a Pearl Jam song. The only one I'm familiar with is when Adam Sandler did that Eddie Vedder imitation on Saturday Night Live, and it was like, "Hey, song, back like a down." So literally Pearl Jam and Iron Maiden, they're in a class by themselves for ennui and boredom and just mundane, commercial crap rock. Horrible. But Bruce Dickinson, he's more than the average rock meathead. He became an airline pilot, so that's something. Let's dive in. You do gain street cred as a rocker for having a hard-scrabble, lower-class British upbringing. And according to Bruce Dickinson, my father was very serious about most things, and he tried very hard. One of a family of 6, he was the offspring of a farm girl, sold into service at age 12, and a raffish local builder and motorcycle riding captain of the football team in Great Yarmouth. Bruce had a pretty decent childhood. There were long walks in the woods, rabbit holes, haunting flatland winter sunsets and sparkling frost, shimmering under purple skies. And that is some of the purple prose that this ghostwriter is going to provide us. He was partially raised by his grandparents, and his grandfather was, of course, a coal miner. With a miner for a grandfather, we got the council home and free coal delivered. And the art of making the coal fire that heated the house has turned me into a lifelong pyromaniac. So they did have a vacuum cleaner and also a mangle, which is 2 rollers that squeeze the water from washed clothing. A giant handle turned the machine. So an early torture device for Bruce and his band, Iron Maiden, that is, of course, named after a horrifying German torture device. Bruce had no pets other than, sadly, a goldfish called Peter, who lived for a, quote, suspiciously long time. Bruce's Uncle John was in the service, and Bruce still has his medals and his service Bible. And this inspired Bruce's love of aviation, and that hobby is going to actually set him above the normal rocker because he accomplished something other than being a rich and famous entertainer. He learned to fly all kinds of planes, including a 727 that Iron Maiden used on their tours. Since it's good to go blind into these kind of stories instead of being an expert, and I'm glad I'm not an expert, I've got to say, Bruce, and he acknowledges this at the end of the book, he doesn't mention divorces or women or anything like that, and he doesn't really talk about other band members. And since I don't know who the other band members are, I read this whole book and then still did not know. So that's sort of interesting. So Bruce did try to take care of his voice. He says he never smoked tobacco except in, quote, the odd joint when I was age 19 to 21. But he says he probably smoked a pack a day just being around his parents, who were chain smokers. So he went to a couple different boarding schools where he was subjected to the predictable abuse from teachers, administration, and other students, because England is grim that way. And just about every biography is going to have that chapter about the grim hazing that happened at their school. So his parents slowly climbed the social ladder. They owned a hotel, an auto body shop, and serial small business entrepreneurs. British boarding school. Quote, it wasn't just the senior boys who kicked you around. You could be legally beaten up by teachers. Corporal punishment was common. It ranged from slippers across the backside by individual teachers to more formal floggings with a cane or birch. His housemaster had his favorite flogging tools, instruments of torture, of course. The first band Bruce Dickinson ever saw was called Wild Turkey, with ex-Jethro Tull bass player Glenn Cornick in the lineup. Bruce's first record was a sampler called Fill Your Head with Rock, comprising mainly West Coast American CBS Records acts. And Fill Your Head with Rock is a double album with some mediocre bands and some great bands. You got Chicago, Santana, Spirit, Steamhammer, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, Flock, Black Widow, Argent, The Byrds, Skin Alley, Laura Nyro, Leonard Cohen, Moondog, Amory Kane, Trees, Al Stewart, Tom Rush, Janis Joplin, Al Cooper, Taj Mahal, Mike Bloomfield, Pacific Gas and Electric, and Johnny Winter. So Bruce was transforming from British schoolboy into rocker. Quote, back then I was spotty, wore an anorak, had flared blue jeans with purple and Sabbath bureau engraved on the thighs, and rode an ear-splittingly uncool moped. And oh yes, I wanted to be a drummer. So Bruce was acting when he was in school. He also became really good at fencing. So on his 18th birthday, he was kicked out of school and sent to another one, the King Edward VII School in Sheffield. I guess this could go in any autobiography of a British rocker. Quote, somehow we got a booking at a pub called the Broadfield. This is in one of his early bands. We were paid £3 as well as one dog-eared hamburger and a bottle of Newcastle Brown apiece. This band was called Paradox, and Bruce didn't like that name. He thought it was too wishy-washy. So they're talking about names, and they came up with, how about Styx? As in the River Styx, and then someone said, oh, isn't somebody else already called that? And Bruce is going to briefly attend Queen Mary College, University of London, after his exams. So Bruce is in London looking for action. Quote, you don't have to be Sherlock Holmes to spot musicians, especially rock musicians. Either wandering around in a daydream or driven by a burning ambition, they are often given away by guitar cases, drumsticks, or a copy of Melody Maker, turned to the classified adverts in the back. As quaint and faintly ridiculous as it sounds now, Melody Maker was the only serious magazine for adverts of musicians, wanted, gear for sale, studios available, and that sort of rock and roll stuff. So he sees a Gibson SG being carried out of its case by a slight, curly-haired guy. Hiya, nice guitar. What kind of stuff are you into? I asked. Priest, Sabbath, Purple. So in the space of 30 seconds, they had a band. And that really is the holy triumvirate of hard rock metal bands, Priest, Sabbath, and Purple. Okay, so it's 1977 in London, and punk is in full flow. And Queen Mary College, Mile End, the East End, was smack bang in the middle of it. The Pistols, Secret Gigs, The Jam. Bethnal, a punk band with a violinist. He doesn't say if he ever went to any of those shows. And his band, they played way too fast. And the more excited they got, the faster they played. Speed is what they called it. And Noddy, his bandmate, agreed. We play too fucking fast. Quote, none of us, and I mean none of us, had any idea that speed was a drug, and a rather popular one for a culture that hadn't discovered and anyway couldn't yet afford cocaine. Beer was the only drug in town. And to Bruce Dickinson's credit, that seems to be the drug that he stuck with through his life. Otherwise, they wouldn't have let him be an airline pilot or fly a 727. So Bruce says that Queen Mary had and still does have an extraordinary facility, the Great Hall, built in the 30s as the People's Palace. It's been modified as a multi-purpose space, but back in 1977 it was still a theater with a seated balcony and large floor, which for gigs was devoid of chairs. He started out as a volunteer there, loading up for various bands. And that would be where he saw Manfred Mann's Earth Band, Ian Dury and the Blockheads, Supertramp. From the sold-out psychedelia of Hawkwind to the smell of dirty old cookers and musty carpet, it was a reality check. So this is odd. Bruce possessed a large stuffed plush Snoopy doll. Snoopy abuse was common at shows. Their first gig was at the Green Man in Plumstead, where we played to not a lot of people. Snoopy was disemboweled, and we played extremely fast and largely out of tune. Just for the record, I made a couple student films in which plush dolls are disemboweled, and I thought I was being so original, but no, the guy from Iron Maiden had been doing that in the 70s, and it was just as dumb back then. So multi-platinum selling band Iron Maiden is being formed with an ad in Melody Maker. Guitarist wanted for pro recording band. Good prospects. So Bruce is getting grant money from the university, and he spent most of it on a PA system for his new band. That was probably a really wise choice. Okay, so he's auditioning for guitarists, and this has got to be a cliche. This might be a scene in many movies, I don't know. He had 100 names, and we booked them in over 3 days at a rehearsal studio above the Rose and Crown in Wandsworth. So nice little pub there. I made notes on their stories and their influences and styles. One of them says, well, I think I'm as good as Jimmy Page, but maybe not as clever. Another says, I like to think of myself as a cross between Ritchie Blackmore and Mozart. Quote, I think the guitar is, for me, an extension of my entire personality. His buddies Phil and Doug jammed on a couple chords with these guys. The, quote, helpless, hopeless, hapless, naive, and outright lunatic people auditioning. Then in walked Tony Lee, a chilled-out Australian with presence, and when he played, which he did effortlessly, he gurned in a most agreeable manner. He looked great, and boy, could he play guitar. Since it was the era of punk, they first called the band Shots. He thinks this is a rubbish name. Though I think Iron Maiden, looking back, is also a rubbish name. I mean, what if you were the Waterboarders? Here come the Thumbscrews' greatest hits. This is an important part in any musician's life. Quote, one random night I unsuspectingly fell under the evil spell, not of bell, book, and candle, but of glass, resin, and matches. Marijuana had arrived. This is basically his first marijuana experience. They're doing sort of the hot knives thing where you burn some hash and collect the smoke in a glass and then huff that up. Of course, you got to have fashion sense if you want to be a true rocker. And a lesbian seamstress measured up Bruce, somewhat unimpressed. Quote, produced my Sparkly Willy cover. This is a cod piece that he wanted for his costume, somewhat along the lines of Jethro Tull's Aqualung outfits. The owner of the Rose and Crown, the pub, took pity on us. I suspect because we spent a lot of money in his rehearsal room. There was one person in the audience. So it's the summer of 1978, and they're starting to pack the house at pub gigs and whatnot. But they are still called the Shots, which is, of course, a rubbish name. Okay, then he's playing for a band called Samson, so he's, popping around the scene, trying to get something going. Got the British metal scene happening here by 1979. Judas Priest, Motorhead, and the Scorpions, and various other offshoots of Deep Purple were all selling out the theaters and arenas, despite the fact that they weren't getting much media attention. So Samson released an album called Survivors. They got front covers of national music magazines. Bruce was credited with backing vocals and guitar. Quote, all absolute rubbish. I was nothing to do with it, and all the songs were in the wrong key for me. My voice was barely getting warmed up singing them. So Samson's album hits number 24 on the British charts. Then he has a chance meeting with Martin Birch. Quote, he has produced some of the greatest rock albums of all time with Deep Purple and Rainbow. Birch was making an album for a band called Iron Maiden called Killers. Bruce had already seen Iron Maiden playing at the Music Machine in Camden. Samson was the headliner. But the Maiden tribe turned up and packed the place out. So this is the moment where Bruce is transformed from just another bloke fucking around on the London music scene with various bands to joining Iron Maiden. Quote, when I'd listened to Deep Purple in rock and Speed King from behind a closed door at 15, I'd felt an upsurge of adrenaline, of chills running up my spine and out to my fingers. When Maiden launched into Prowler, I got the same goosebumps. This was a modern-day Deep Purple, but with a theatrical side. From the moment they took the stage in Camden, I knew I would be their singer.
Tortillas, oh yeah.
It's supposed to be
Tortillas, oh tortillas.
This is supposed to be a
So Iron Maiden is already well established before Bruce joins. Their first album had gone, quote, straight to number 4, and they were now a worldwide band. So Bruce is asked to audition to be the lead singer of Iron Maiden. He's going to learn 4 songs for his audition. Band had already had 2 albums by this point. So basically they're like, you're hired and we want to book a recording studio tomorrow. So Bruce is Iron Maiden's vocalist for their 3rd album, which contains the hit Run to the Hills, the most recognizable of all Iron Maiden songs, perhaps thanks to MTV, where the video was played on high rotation for many years. So that's it. Bruce Dickinson joins Iron Maiden for their 3rd album called The Number of the Beast. With the hit single Run to the Hills. It's a huge smash hit. There's no reason to really go further into this lengthy book. It would just suffice to say that Bruce becomes a rich and famous rock star. He becomes an airline pilot. At one point, Iron Maiden is touring and he is their pilot. Sadly, he gets diagnosed with head and neck cancer. That's a bummer. And the grossest part of the book is when, they have him on opioids to fight the pain of this horrible treatment for this horrible cancer. And he ends up constipated. There's a scene where he's fishing out lemon-sized, hard calcified feces from his own behind. And also a perfect thought as we transition to this message of a commercial nature.
And now, advertising from our sponsor.
I think like Kiss, although without the elaborate kabuki costumes, Iron Maiden were marketing geniuses. Their album art has a distinctive look, and it always features their cartoonish zombie character who's called Eddie. Eddie started as a mask during their early shows and evolved into, as of recent tours, like a massive blow-up, movable stage set piece. And again, this is where Iron Maiden loses me. It all seems the same. The music is all the same. Every album is the same, and the art is all the same. And, this puerile theme of, look at this zombie Eddie critter and what a badass he is. It's all really designed to appeal to the 14-year-old male rock consumer, and that's fine. But it's funny, my kids, they don't like rock. They think it's stuff like this is just stupid. Back in the day, I thought Kiss was stupid, but there was a begrudging street cred to be had for Iron Maiden. But, the more you delve into Iron Maiden, the less you find because it's boring. And many of the images of Eddie on the album covers, he's seen as sort of this zombie British cavalryman. There's one image where Eddie is standing over what looks like the corpse of Margaret Thatcher, and that got the band in some trouble. It's funny, most of these meathead British metal bands are as apolitical as the next, right? But the song Run to the Hills, it actually has a deep anti-imperialist, anti-colonial message that's quite thoughtful. White man came across the sea. He brought us pain and misery. He killed our tribes and killed our creed. He took our game for his own need. We fought him hard, we fought him well. Out on the plains we gave him hell. But many came too much for Cree. Oh, will we ever be set free? Riding through the dust clouds and barren wastes, galloping hard on the plains, chasing the redskins back to their holes, fighting them at their own game. Murder for freedom, the stab in the back. Women and children are cowards attack. Run to the hills. Run for your lives. Run to the hills. Run for your lives. Soldier blue in the barren wastes, hunting and killing their game, raping the women and wasting the men. The only good Injuns are tame. Selling them whiskey and taking their gold, enslaving the young and destroying the old. Run to the hills. Run for your lives.
I'm a person. They're gonna kill us all. I wish I was shorter because they like people that are tall.
So speaking of Eddie and Eddie clones, there's a Seattle thrash metal band, sort of bordering on punk. It started in 1981 and dissolved in the early 90s, called The Accused. And yeah, there's a umlaut on the U there. And they have this mascot for their marketing. It's much more punk rock and crude and better than Eddie, and it's Martha Splatterhead. And this is basically Eddie-looking zombie, but it's a woman with very large breasts. And she's often in violent acts, ripping apart someone's skull, wielding 2 giant machetes, bloody knives, and it's raw and crude, and it hasn't been put through the corporate filter like Eddie. Now, The Accused is another sad. Right at the point where you had these record companies flooding into town trying to sign anyone, any 4 white guys that could barely pick up an instrument was going to get a record deal. Drug problems, specifically heroin, took the band down. And say no to drugs, kids, because Bruce Dickinson of Iron Maiden is incredibly rich, and the guys from The Accused are living in vans or storage sheds outside of Tacoma, Washington, because Tacoma has become gentrified and is now too expensive. I've got to say this for Bruce Dickinson, singer of Iron Maiden. There's no sexual braggery in this book, and that's a feature. It's part of the formula of these rock autobiographies. Look at how manly I was, and these women were throwing themselves at me. He even says at the end of the book here that he kept his girlfriends and divorces and personal life out of the book. So we'll just take your word for it, Bruce, that you were this chaste and honorable person, and you didn't have these Me Too moments that so many rock stars not only had, but brag about in their books. Speaking of that, after these messages, we'll be back to talk about an autobiography by heavy metal meathead Dave Mustaine of Megadeth. Ooh, yeah.
Yo, I'm a tortilla.
I'm a tortilla, baby. I got cheese.
I got beans.
I got the little bit of meat and
Sour cream.
All right, the kids are awake, and there's going to be some noise actually for the next 4 months of this podcast. There might be some sucky audio, but Dave Mustaine doesn't deserve good audio. His 2011 book, Mustaine, a heavy metal memoir, has just a close-up of his face on the cover. There's a quote, entirely awesome, from the Washington Post. New York Times bestseller. Okay, so actually, even Dave Mustaine does not deserve this bad audio quality. We got the kids are awake. We're going to come back tomorrow morning, and that'll give me more time to think about Dave Mustaine's impact on our world. And, we're just having fun here with this podcast, especially this episode. Rock stuff is so silly, and I think we're focusing on books written by rock stars, because that is usually a ridiculous concept. It's not that fun, though. I mean, at least I'm reviewing this book so that you don't have to. Dave Mustaine, he was in Metallica, better known as Alcoholica, and then he got kicked out and he started Megadeth, and of course their hit song, Peace Sells, But Who's Buying? That's all I can recall of their music. And the guy's a fucking Republican. He says, I was a supporter, if not a fan, of George W. Bush, primarily because I admired his handling of 9/11, and I did not disagree with our involvement in Iraq. My God, these rock autobiographies are torture. And this Mustaine guy, I mean, the sexual boasting in this one, it's every page, every sentence. He's also been in and out of rehab a million times. And he's a kick-ass shredding guitar player in addition to being a singer. He also takes himself too seriously, like Bruce Dickinson, the singer of Iron Maiden, who we covered in part 1 of this episode. He sort of takes himself seriously. There's not much kind of self-deprecating. I know this is all a big Spinal Tap thing. He's a serious dude. And the tragedy of most of these rock autobiographies is that grunge and kind of that alternative music scene killed all these bands. They're not really mentioning it here. I know Dave Mustaine worked for MTV as a correspondent during the 92 presidential campaign. But again, he's a Republican, and he says, quote, I look at it this way. If Clint Eastwood had a party named after him, that would be my party. So he's sort of an unsophisticated libertarian. It's pretty simple for me, really. I want to be able to carry a gun, listen to whatever music I like, eat, drink, and be merry and not hurt anyone else. The exception, obviously, being self-defense. Disappointing here. This is really, this crosses over to 2 genres, the rock autobiography and the Confessions of a Reformed Addict, or the Recovery Journal. And of course, Dave Mustaine claims that he found Jesus at a certain point during his in and out of rehab, endless, horrible drug addiction. It wasn't long afterward that I fell to my knees and said all the prayers and accepted Jesus Christ into my life. It didn't happen without some resistance on my part, and God knows that in the years since I have been at times inconsistent in following a Christian way of life. So let's jump to 2005, and Megadeth is scheduled to play shows in Greece and Israel with Rotting Christ and Dissection, both of which had been labeled, accurately or not, as satanic bands. This presents a dilemma for Mustaine because he has embraced Christianity and he needs to, quote, protect myself from being in the wrong environment. Some people get saved and blend into the background, leading quietly dignified, meaningful lives. I couldn't hope to do that. Fame can be a terrific thing. It can also be a bitch. Oh, this is horrible. This is literally torture. So let's take a break and look at the medieval torture instrument known as the Iron Maiden. The Pittsburgh Dispatch, July 20th, 1891. The atrocious Iron Maiden of Nuremberg. She will spend the summer in London. Her household horrors go with her, cruelties of the past. I see that the Iron Maiden of Nuremberg has gone to spend the summer and perhaps make an even longer visit in London at Madame Tussaud's. Everybody is acquainted, at least by reputation, with Madame Tussaud. She is one of the very few people who have made a fortune out of a skeleton in a closet. Madame Tussaud has a whole suite of closets crowded with the most interesting skeletons. The Iron Maiden may need an introduction. She is one of the most atrocious of all the graven images of history. When you see her, you think of those old iron statues of hungry gods, with a furnace for a stomach, in which they used to put children and fair youths to be consumed in the days of human sacrifice. There is no fire inside the Iron Maiden, but instead of that, cold steel made in the shape of long, sharp prongs. They used to put a man inside and shut the iron doors on him. The space is exactly big enough for a man's body. The steel prongs are fastened to the inner surface of the doors. The left-hand door closes and the victim is pierced by half a dozen of these steel prongs. Then the right-hand door is shut and a steel prong penetrates each of his eyes. And that is the end of the man, after perhaps quite a bit of suffering. Along with the Iron Maiden, Madame Tussaud's is going to take along some of the other household items, household furniture, they say, from Nuremberg Castle. Thumb screws, flesh scrapers, eye gougers, ducking tools, boots to hold not only human feet but melted lead at the same time, racks and wheels. Here we have the Iron Maiden mentioned in the News and Citizen, January 19th, 1921, the convict ship Success. The following is an interesting account of a visit to the convict ship Success at Philadelphia. It's by Lillian Ladeau Jewett. The boat, the Success, is the only remaining survivor of England's fleet of felon transports, which consisted of 5 ships. The prisons of England became so overfilled with convicts. In later years, she used this fleet of ships as a means of transporting some of her convicts away to Australia. In 1851, the Success was permanently stationed as a receiving prison in Hudson's Bay, Australia. In 1885, this method was abolished. The ship was scuttled and sunk in Sydney Harbor. She remained underwater for 5 years and then, at an immense expense, was raised to be exhibited to the present generation as an educational lesson and a vivid reminder of an almost forgotten period of penal history. This is how a sick society treats some of its citizens, imprisons them, then ships them off to a desolate continent halfway around the world. Quote, "It often happened that many of England's prisoners were cast into prison for no greater offense than stealing a small piece of linen or a crime of similar value. Often the sentence would be from 7 to 20 years, or for their lifetime. The cells of the ship are on the 2 lower decks, the lowest one of which has no light or ventilation whatever. The second deck is a little better in that it has a small amount of light and ventilation. None of these cells are large enough to hold more than a couple of chairs, beds or bunks being an unheard of luxury.
Often from 2 to 6 or more prisoners were kept in one cell. 2 of these cells were called the Black Hole, as there was no light whatever in these cells. The men were fastened by the ankles to heavy iron rings in the floor and left there from 5 to 60 days, according to their offense. So if you think these rock autobiographies are torture, no, torture is torture, especially when you're on a fetid, foul, disgusting prison ship, taking weeks or even months to get to Australia. So yeah, fuck the British Navy. Ugh, God, as an American, I can doubly say that. The prisoners were allowed 1 hour daily in the open air on the upper deck, and many times were forced to drag heavy iron balls weighing from 5 to 70 pounds, which were fastened to their ankles with them. Upon the top deck are shown all the forms of torture which were used: cat o' nine tails, the Iron Maiden, heavy iron balls with chains, the compulsory salt water bath, the branding iron, the iron straitjacket. That should be the name of a band, the Iron Straitjacket. Of course, I'm reminded of Eddie, the cartoon mascot of Iron Maiden, is often depicted wearing a straitjacket because he's so crazy. The spiked collar, the flogging frames, and numerous other forms resorted to in those days. Every prisoner was branded in the palm of his or her hand with a broad arrow, which was England's prisoner mark. Actually, it was more widely known as Property of England mark, as far as I remember. The Iron Maiden was one of the most severe methods of third degree. It was a large iron frame, a trifle larger than a person, with the inside studded with spikes. It would cause all kinds of misery, just like these rock autobiographies are causing the reader, me, who has read all of them at least once, and I'm going to summarize them in a way too long podcast, which is going to be torture for you, dear listener. One indication that Mustaine is an asshole, back to Megadeth. There have been 18 members of Megadeth, plus Mustaine. Ghostwriter and award-winning journalist and best-selling author Joe Layden, according to this book, has written more than 30 books, including The Last Great Fight, which was named one of the best sports books of 2007 by Sports Illustrated. He is the co-author of the New York Times bestsellers There and Back Again and The Rock Says. So he ghost wrote a book for The Rock. He lives in upstate New York. And Joe, I hope you got a hefty paycheck from this, or at least a decent chunk of change. You had to churn out something painful and probably deal in person with this Dave Mustaine guy. Here's Dave Mustaine in his own words. Impoverished? Transient childhood? Check. Abusive alcoholic parent? Check. Mind-fucking religious weirdness? In my case, the extremes of the Jehovah's Witnesses and Satanism? Check. Alcoholism, drug addiction, homelessness? Check, check, check. Soul-crushing professional and artistic setbacks? Like when he was kicked out of Alcoholica? Check. Rehab? Check. 17 times, give or take. Near-death experience? Check that one too. Sadly, Dave Mustaine was diagnosed with throat cancer in June of 2019, and as of October, he said he's finished treatment. So again, we don't wish that on anyone, even an poorly behaved rock star. So what masochist wouldn't want to hear about even more poorly conceived and badly written rock autobiographies? Maybe we should explore some of these very briefly in our Rusty the Media Watchdog section. Oh, Rusty,
The Media Watchdog.
Tales of a Ratt. That's R-A-T-T, as in the 80s butt rock hair metal band. Things You Shouldn't Know. An autobiography by Bobby Blotzer with ghostwriter Jim Clayton. Book is number 34,900 on Amazon's list of literature in the literature category. From the Amazon description, Tales of a Rat traces the history of Bobby Blotzer's personal journey of becoming an 80s rock legend while taking the reader through a conversational blow-by-blow of what it was like to manage fame, fortune, and the realities of an era's end and rebirth. The era's end would be when grunge came in, and also some of those insipid indie bands like Smashing Pumpkins, which are horrifying, pretentious crap. But anyway, that whole genre of the alt-angst rock, that wiped out these butt rock hair bands, and there was no fucking rebirth, so we don't have to read this book, which we're not going to do, to figure that out. Rebirth is playing the casino circuit for a bunch of bald, middle-aged white guys like myself, except ones with less refined musical tastes. Uninterestingly, Ratt was originally called Mickey Ratt, and that might have been a tip of the hat to that great underground comic series by Robert Armstrong, where a Mickey Mouse was turned into a slovenly, horrifying drug addict. Very funny stuff and really good art. That was in 1976, and Bobby Blotzer, he's the drummer, joined Ratt in 1981. To prove my point about how grunge is a theme in all of these 80 biographies of 80s rock guys, there's a chapter called 80s metal versus 90s grunge. So there you go. And, although most grunge, as we don't like to call it here in Seattle, was fairly apolitical, at least a band like Nirvana, had pretensions to be something a little more. And their singer and guitarist actually read books and frowned upon some of these rock meatheads. Okay, let's move on to the 80s hair band, one-hit wonders, Enough Z Nuff. No, just kidding. The tortures would be too extreme with that. VH1 did some profiles. It was called Behind the Music, right? And they somehow did an entire 20-minute episode about Enough Z Nuff. And the great line that the writers came up with at the end of the show to talk about how the band broke up was, finally, the world seemed to have had enough of Enough Z Nuff. But is it enough? Because there is sex, drugs, rat, and roll. My Life in Rock. A memoir by Stephen Percy, who's apparently also a member of Ratt. I was a young person at the time. They had no respect. Even Motley Crue had some sort of mystique, but not Ratt. This is Sam Benjamin is the ghostwriter, and on the cover of this, he looks like he's in a cinder block prison cell, and he's wearing a sleeveless t-shirt that says, "Eat me." And that's about all of this rock schlock bookerage that we can gobble for one episode, or at least for this Rusty the Media Watchdog segment. Had enough torture, folks? Well, guess what? We love bad taste and we love schlock. And in fact, this is a true crime podcast. And there's nothing that is more of a crime than a rock musician that takes themselves too seriously. So stay tuned for episode 11 of the Doom Planet podcast. Rock autobiographies are torture. Part 2. Sebastian Bach's Me Too moments. Tall, handsome, with a pretty face and a flowing mane of gorgeous hair, Sebastian Bach epitomized 80s hair metal. Another boring story of sex, drugs, a bit of rock, and then more drugs and ennui. Sebastian Bach, of course, is the glorious lead singer of Skid Row. And they came out of Toms River, New Jersey, an area close to the Jersey Shore and Long Beach Island that I know well. We will also hear about Doc McGee, the manager of Bon Jovi, and these guys in Skid Row and Bon Jovi, some of them knew each other before they had the fame and the cocaine and the glory. Doc managed a bunch of these butt rock bands back in the day. So, we hope you will join us. This has been the Doomed Planet podcast. We are part of the Wild World News Network. Our music is by DJ Cat and Friends. Goodbye.
5, 6, 7, 8.
Goodbye. This is the end of the song.